Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister on Tuesday, the 12th of November, day 403 of the October 7th war. A couple of points from me and then straight to your questions. Please put them in the chat together with your news outlet. Firstly, on the tragic fallen amongst Israel's armed forces, it is with regret that I share with you that since the start of the war, Israel's fallen soldiers have unfortunately risen to 787. Major in the reserves, Itamar Levin Friedman was 34 years old and from Eilat. First Sergeant Ophir Eliyahu was just 20 and from Cholon. First Sergeant Naveh Yair Asulin was 21 and from Karmit. First Sergeant Or Katz was 20 and from Ma'ale Adumim. He was a medic in the military. And First Sergeant Gary Lalruakima Zolat was 21 years old and from Afula. All these boys fell fighting Hamas terrorists in northern Gaza. The Prime Minister sent condolences to their families on behalf of the people of Israel, but there are no words of mine that can assuage the pain of their parents and their families. We embrace them and those dear families who have lost their precious heroes, sons and daughters in this war for our very existence. The price of war is heavy and painful, and each casualty is a world unto itself. May their memories be a blessing forever. Next, an update from Kogat and Israel's humanitarian work in Gaza. Israel is increasing the volume and the routes of aid into Gaza. Today, the Kisufim crossing was open to get more humanitarian aid trucks in. That means more food, more water, more medical supplies, and more shelter equipment to central and southern Gaza. All of Israel's efforts are fully in accordance with international law. A total of 1,122,000 tons of humanitarian aid have gone into Gaza on 57,000 trucks and 10,000 pallets. Now, over the last day in northern Gaza, in Jabalia and Beit Hanun, hundreds of food packages and thousands of litres of water have been delivered. These have gone to Gazan civilians still remaining in Beit Hanun in cooperation with international aid organisations. This was in addition to last week's 11 trucks of food, water and medical supplies to the Jabalia camp. Let me give you a roundup of the picture since October. 741 aid trucks have been delivered to northern Gaza via the Erez West crossing. In coordination with the World Health Organization, 244 patients and their companions have been evacuated from hospitals in northern Gaza over the last month, and 50,000 litres of fuel, 180 blood units, hundreds of boxes of medical supplies and food have been delivered to support hospitals in northern Gaza. Now, to those that say that not enough aid is getting in, take a look at these images behind me. This is what the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom looks like right now. The Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom. This is how it looks right now. These are images of 900 trucks worth of aid just waiting to be picked up by aid organizations. Every day we're bombarded with criticism around the world and from UN aid agencies. To their shame, these same UN aid agencies, some of this aid has been waiting there for months. So we say to the United Nations, pick up the aid so more aid can get into Gaza. And then look what happens when the aid does get into Gaza. Just yesterday, an internal convoy traveling inside Gaza from the north to the south was stopped by the IDF. When inspected, our troops found a bag containing ammunition for firearms. Yesterday, the IDF also announced the expansion of the humanitarian area where most Gazans are. So that means access to field hospitals established since the start of this war, tent compounds, shelter supplies, provisions of food, water, medicine and medical equipment in cooperation with the international community. And finally, before we go to questions, let me just say that on our war aims, our war objectives are being met. In Gaza, Hamas have been eviscerated. Yes, it has been at a heavy price in the lives of our precious soldiers. But we have broken Hamas in Jabalia. Slowly but surely, we are accomplishing our war aims. We have degraded Hezbollah significantly in our north. And as for Iran, let's be clear, their vulnerability has been exposed. And our highest priority, as confirmed by the Prime Minister, we will bring our hostages home. Every single one of them, 101 of them, 36 we know have already been murdered by Hamas, but we will bring them all home. So that's the end of our briefing today. I'll now take your questions. Please put them in the chat together with your outlet. First question here is from Dan Williams. It's your question, Dan, from Bloomberg. How close is a Lebanon truce? Have Israel and the US agreed on its terms? Thank you for that question, Dan. Our Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, yesterday said that there has been some progress on a potential truce. But let's be clear, our objectives when it comes to the north are for Hezbollah to be pushed back behind the Litani River, for Hezbollah's arms and weapons and firing abilities to be greatly diminished as they have been already, to ensure that our people can go back into their homes. That is a simple requirement that any decent country would insist on, that our people can live safely in their homes in sovereign Israeli territory. Next question is from Amelie Botbol, and a question from JNS. Is there an Israeli delegation flying to Doha or Cairo this week for hostage negotiations? If not, why? We marked 400 days. What is being done on our hands to pressure Hamas diplomatically to release the hostages? Thank you for that question, Amelie. Let me just say this, that the government and the Prime Minister has said that the release of the hostages, getting our hostages home, 101 of them, for more than 400 days in Hamas's terror dungeons, it is our highest priority. It is Hamas which is holding them. Israel will leave no stone unturned. We will go anywhere, we will do anything to ensure that we can get them out alive, and also the bodies of our hostages, to give them the decent burial which they deserve, as is only right. It is a war crime. It is a humanitarian crime every single moment that they are being held in captivity. Hamas need to release them now. I can tell you, Amelie, that in the latest round of negotiations, as confirmed by Jake Sullivan yesterday in the media, it is Hamas that keeps throwing in conditions which are simply not only unreasonable but are impossible, and it is Hamas that has delayed the negotiations, that has delayed them releasing our people. They need to be released right now. But now I won't share with you the movements of our negotiators, as is our practice, but I can tell you Israel, from our government, will go anywhere and will do anything to bring our people home. But it is Hamas which is holding them, Hamas that has refused to release them for more than a year now, and it is Hamas that is responsible for their continuing captivity. Next question here is from Razieh Akok from AFP, the news agency. Arab and Muslim leaders demanded yesterday that Israel withdraw from occupied Palestinian territories as a precondition for regional peace, and criticize horrific and shocking crimes in Gaza. In a statement, they also said that the international community should launch a plan with specific steps and timing under international sponsorship to make a sovereign Palestinian state a reality. What is the government's response to the conclusions of the summit? Thank you for that question, Razieh from AFP. Let me deal with those points one by one. Firstly, when you talk about a Palestinian state that is a Hamas state, that is a state which is equivalent to an ISIS state, will not solve any problems in this area. It will lead to more war. So we will always insist that any such action will not have the effect of creating an ISIS state right on our border, right next to us. Right now we have Iran, which is to our east. We don't need an Iranian-backed terrorist state right on our border. It would do nothing for ordinary Palestinians. It would do nothing for peace. It would only make the situation worse. Secondly, when it comes to the Palestinian Authority, who already run the lives of Palestinians inside Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority have not, in 402 days, found a single instance, not 1 second, to condemn the appalling atrocities of October 7th. Indeed, the opposite. President Mahmoud Abbas, he eulogized Yahya Sinwar, the terrorist mastermind of Hamas, who Israel eliminated. He eulogized him. There was a moment's silence in the Palestinian Authority cabinet for his death. So a state which condones terrorist violence against us, that lauds it, that pays terrorists' families, this famous pay to slay policy, whereby the families of terrorists who are in our jails or that are suicide bombers, their families get paid a stipend by the Palestinian Authority. This is completely and utterly unreasonable, and no state in its right mind would agree to a terrorist entity, invite a terrorist entity to set up a state, a pseudo-state next to our border. No state would put up with it, and certainly Israel will not either. Now, when it comes to peace, Israel does want peace. Indeed, I can tell you that the Prime Minister has had 3 conversations with President-elect Donald Trump on the issue, not only of the threat from Iran, but also on widening peace in our region, to spread the Abraham Accords to other countries. Yes, of course, we want peace with our neighbors inside Gaza. They're not going anywhere. The Gazans are staying where they are. And the Palestinians inside Judea and Samaria, they're not going anywhere either. They will live there. They will continue to live there. We do wish to establish peaceful relations, but not the creation of an ISIS-like state on our border. That should be completely obvious to any impartial observer of the current situation. Okay, any other questions? So let me just see here. I've taken the first one, second one. There's another one from Dan Williams. Does Israel worry about, or Dan Williams from Bloomberg, does Israel worry about a potential curtailing of US aid due to continued disputes about the extent of humanitarian aid given, allowed into, going into Gaza? Thank you for that question, Dan. Let me just say this, that the government of Israel takes extremely seriously the letter sent just shy of a month ago to the Israeli government from Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken. We take extremely seriously the contents of that letter. We have studied it intensely. We have acted upon it with the best will that we can to get as much aid, which is why we say every single day there is no limit to the amount of aid that can get into Gaza. So we are doing our utmost. Today, Dan, I gave you an update of the extra effort we are making by opening new crossings, by getting more aid into the region. So yes, of course, we take the issues raised in that letter extremely seriously. We've studied it, we have acted upon it, we have done everything we can, and that's why we give these briefings every single day to highlight the issues, the real issues. Now, I showed you, Dan, and all the other journalists on this call, I showed you 900 trucks worth of aid that simply languishes in the sun at Kerem Shalom. This is aid which the UN should have picked up and should have delivered. They have not. The failings are not with Israel. We are willing to get as much aid as possible through. If countries send the aid will go in after it has been inspected. That is our objective. Our battle is not with ordinary Gazans, it is with Hamas. We have eviscerated them, we've taken them apart in Jabalia, and we will continue using international law, in compliance with international law. We will continue to get as much aid as is sent to go into Gaza. Next question here is from Fred Ager. In a recent interview with I-24, Guy Israel, Dr. Mike Evans, advisor to Donald Trump, advisor to on US-Israel relations, stated that Trump wants Israel to finish the job in the next 8 weeks. Has President-elect Trump, during any of the recent calls with Prime Minister Netanyahu, demanded explicitly that by January the 20th, 2025, Netanyahu wrapped up the October 7th war on all fronts? Thank you for that question, Fred. Look, Israel wants this war to be over as soon as possible as well. You should be in no doubt of that fact whatsoever. And we are achieving our war aims. It's very, very clear. On the confirmation of the death of Yahya Sinwar, the Prime Minister said this was the beginning of the end of our war against Hamas. This is the day after. This is the first day of the day after Hamas. But the government has made clear that the war will continue until all of our goals are being met. And they are, as I have repeated many times, the return of all of our hostages, 101 of them, dismantling of Hamas's governmental and military capabilities. We are eviscerating Hamas. We are taking them apart. Of their 24 battalions, 23 of them have been shattered. The remnants are fighting us now in the north, but we have broken them in Jabalia, and unfortunately at a very heavy price of our dear, brave soldiers and our reservists as well. We are taking them apart, and of course we are removing the terrorist threat to Israel. And finally, returning our residents to the north safely to their homes is our final war objective. Those are our war objectives, and they are being achieved. We are making progress, and we will do everything in our power to make sure this war, as we wish it, meets its objectives and ends as quickly as possible. Next question is from Jody Cohen from World is One News. What do you think is behind the criticism of Israel regarding aid in Gaza? Why aren't the aid agencies picking up most of the aid? Thank you for that question, Jody. Look, COGAT is the right address for those sorts of questions. They are responsible for getting aid into Gaza. But I would just say that the criticism that is coming at us, at Israel, from the United Nations. Look, the United Nations is a biased organization when it comes to Israel. Let's not forget as well that the United Nations has a majority of non-democratic countries. And, there is some sort of halo effect of the United Nations in much of the international community, and repeated in the media. We constantly have this idea of the UN has said this and the UN has said that. The UN is not, when it comes to Israel and the fight we are facing, winning against the terrorists, is not impartial. They have, unfortunately, never called Hamas a terrorist organization. What an outrage. All of its predictions when it comes to the UN about famine have never been proved to be true. UNRWA, a UN aid agency, is infiltrated by Hamas. Their own headquarters sat just above Hamas's headquarters. I've seen pictures of the shared electricity between the two the headquarters of UNRWA, and also Hamas. So this idea that the UN is has some sort of halo, whatever they say is correct, is incorrect. Our representative in the United Nations, Danny Danon, has repeated very often that instead of condemning Hamas of the rapes and the beheadings and the terrible actions they have taken, they have not even called Hamas a terrorist organization. There is huge inefficiency in the United Nations. There is huge bias when it comes to the United Nations. Israel knows this, the US knows this, and other countries should know it as well, which is probably gives you the reason why these UN aid agencies are as inefficient as they are. It seems that the United UNRWA in particular, its objective. Don't forget, UNRWA is a UN aid agency. UNRWA's objective was to perpetuate this conflict. When they ran a school system in Gaza, they didn't they didn't teach peace and cooperation and living together in this region. They taught that Gazans would soon uproot Israel. Gazans would soon be able to go into Israel and reclaim, as they said, that what they call their land, not cooperation, not peace, not living together, not a brighter future, but this perpetual war. This idea that 76 years on, you are still a refugee from a conflict from 76 years ago that exists nowhere else. So those are some of the reasons why the UN unfortunately continues to, there's more resolutions against Israel at the UN than against any other country. Mark Weiss, next question from Khan Radio. Where is Yahya Sinwar's body being held? Under what conditions would Israel exchange his body? Thank you, Mark, for that question. I don't have any information about the whereabouts of Sinwar's remains. I would simply point you to what the US did with Osama bin Laden remains. He was... Well, I won't go any further into this subject, but no, I haven't got any particular information on where Yahya Sinwar's body is being held. Just to say that he was a brutal head of a rapist army, and the world is a better place without that evil, bloodthirsty murderer in it. Next, Aya Batrawi. Aya, could you just... Are you from NPR? Okay, we'd like to ask, Aya asks, if Hamas is eviscerated and all the war aims achieved in Gaza, including in Jabalia, as you just laid out, does this mean that war in Gaza is no longer necessary and the siege of northern Gaza is no longer necessary? So, Aya, thank you for that question. Number one, there is no siege of northern Gaza. There is, as I've mentioned today, if you would listen to me today, you heard me talking about the amount of aid that is going into northern Gaza. I would just ask you to think back to any US action in other conflicts around the world, or the Allies in the Second World War, if they ever pushed aid into the entities which they were fighting against. Israel has done that. We refuse to feed Hamas, the terrorist organization, but we have pushed aid as much as possible to feed ordinary Gazans. Now, you're right, the conflict is not over. We are in Gaza against Hamas. We talked about 23 of the 24 battalions have been shattered, but they are regrouping in the north of Gaza to fight us from there. We lost, and I announced the falling of 5 soldiers today who are fighting this terrorist threat. Let's be honest, Hamas hates Gazans. They despise Gazans. Yesterday, Israel released footage of Hamas torturing Gazans. Hamas are prepared to fight to the last Gazan. All this is obvious to understand that Israel is liberating Gaza from Hamas. That's precisely what we're doing to provide a better future for ordinary Gazans. So rather than repeating Hamas talking points and allowing them to fight another day, the Israeli government has made clear there is no situation whereby Hamas will be left in power in Gaza. That is one of our war aims, and as long as they continue to fight us, we will not get every single one of them. That's been absolutely clear. Not every single Nazi was killed at the end of the Second World War, but their ability to wage war against the Allies was defeated, and they surrendered. Hamas have not surrendered. Would that they would. Would that they lay down their arms and return our hostages. That really would be the end of the conflict in Gaza. And that could happen this very afternoon. Perhaps you could share that on NPR. Next question from Melanie Lidman. Could you please comment on whether Israel thinks they have answered the demands put forward in the Blinken letter regarding aid to Gaza? Thank you. And you're from AP. Thank you, Mel. I think I've dealt with that quite comprehensively. We have studied the letter. We have spent a lot of time on this issue. We have done a tremendous amount to deal with the issues raised in this letter because it is our under international law, and we've been loyal. We have been followed every last word of international law when it comes to providing aid into Gaza. We've pushed more than 1 million tons of aid into Gaza, even through very, very difficult scenarios. So we've worked very hard on this issue. We value the friendship of our US allies. They're our closest allies in the world. It's a bipartisan relationship. Israelis are very keen to remind the world of that fact. There is one president at a time. There is one administration at a time. And we are working extremely hard on the contents of that letter. Okay, was there any other questions? No, can I just have another quick look just to make sure? Okay, I think I have, just go right to the bottom. Okay, I think that, yeah. Oh, sorry, Joel Pollock. I didn't see your question, Joel. Let me see. Where is it here? Oh, David Clement and Joel Pollock. Let me get to the David Clement question first. Joel, if you could repeat your question. Okay, 1 second. Just stop moving there. Stop moving there. Okay, David Clement's question from the News Forum. Aid groups have said that Israel has missed the US deadline for increased aid to Gaza. Does the PMO have comment on the deadline and possibility of arms restrictions? And has the PM spoken to the president-elect about the deadline ahead of taking office? Thank you for that question, David. I believe I've dealt with that. That's various versions of that question has been shared with us this morning, and I have dealt with that question. And the one from is there a Joel Pollock question? Just go down to the bottom. Okay, Joel Pollock from Breitbart News. In May, there were leaks to Channel 12 of discussions between Prime Minister Netanyahu, then Defense Minister Minister Gallant, Shin Bet, head of Ronen Bar, about the day after Gaza. Why were these leaks not investigated? Thank you for that question, Joel. I haven't got any information on that. As you know, this war has been going on for 402 days now. Our country has been focused on this difficult war against our enemies. Our soldiers and our people, our reserve soldiers particularly, but all of our conscripts have stepped up to the plate when it comes to fighting this war. All of us are focused on a hostage deal, which Hamas continues to impose impossible demands to get them out. All of us are focused on this issue. When it comes to the day after in Gaza, let me share with you what the Prime Minister has said, which I have repeated here already. We're looking and we are in discussions with regional partners, as well as working with Gazans who do not wish this country to be destroyed, non-Hamas Gazans. You will have seen them on social media already starting to speak their mind in a way which they have not in their past. Once Gaza is free of Hamas, we can move to the Gaza, to the day after Gaza, a better future for ordinary Gazans, where they can have a brighter future rather than this continual war, this jihad against us, which has brought them nothing but misery and nothing but terror to this country as well. Okay, I think that generally is the last question. So, rather long briefing today. Thank you for sticking with us. We'll have another briefing tomorrow. In the meantime, please do stay safe. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining. Bye-bye.